Let's take a quick look at some of the control room functionality found in Nuendo 7. The control room is very powerful and allows you to do monitor control, cue mixes, as well as metering. The control room is kind of an underlying part of the program. So if at times if you notice that your play tool isn't sounding when you think it should, or if you audition sound effects and you don't hear them, that's often because they're being sent through the control room to the listen bus. The control room is set up in your devices menu by going to the VST connections or by hitting F4. We see our input tab, our output tab. Now, one thing to be aware of is that we want the outputs to be defined but not physically connected to the audio interface. Otherwise, we risk the possibility of double busing the signal. There's a preference that can help mitigate this problem. So if you go to the preferences under VST to control room, we could have a couple preferences, and one of them is exclusive device ports for monitor channels. So if you find yourself where maybe you need to set up a connection that's being defined in multiple destinations, what you could do is just simply toggle that preference if you're not able to. But you could also have the control room volume active by default in the transport bar. So if I just wanted to come here and use this transport volume slider right there, I could use that for my control room. So what we want to do now is go to the Studio tab. In the Studio tab, first thing we want to do is to turn on the control room. So probably the first thing we want to set up is going to be our monitor source. So if I go to my monitors, I'll say, okay, I want to have my Yamaha monitors. You could just type in a name, a description. At this point, we could say, okay, I want this to be a mono, stereo, or a 5.1 setup. We will hit OK. And then we could now have our monitors. So what we want to do is to define the connections directly here in the monitors as opposed to the outputs once again. And if I wanted to add a cue mix, I could have 4 different cue mix. So say we have an actor named Huey. We could just have that, or voiceover artist or drummer, whatever we want. And again, we take these outputs that could be sent to the headphone monitor system. And we could also have external inputs. So if I'm mixing a concert and it's in 5.1 surround sound and I want to use another DVD as a reference, I could just say, let's have our DVD as an external input. And we could also, especially handy in post-production, different monitor sources. So if I wanted to come here, we could just say, okay, I wanted to have all of my different stems or my inputs monitored or my outputs monitored, and we could have these set up. If I need to communicate with people in the recording studio from the control room, I could actually activate a talkback microphone. So it's just as simple as kind of defining what you want and then defining the connections. Now I have a preset created here, and you can see this kind of taken to the extreme, where I can have a talkback microphone, I have an iPad, a 1/2-inch tape machine, a DAT, 2 computers as external inputs. I could monitor my 5.1, my stereo out, my sound effects, my vocal, music, and background stems. I have my 4 cue mixes, as well as my 4 monitors. In addition to this, we have a metering channel. So if you have hardware external meters, we can just simply route the signal directly out to your metering as well. Get an idea of what the control room actually looks like. So we could access it as an independent window directly from our devices menu. More commonly, we could access it from the mix console. So if I come here, if we don't see it on the right-hand side, we could click on the left-hand side here, the upper left-hand side, and activate the control room view from the main mix console. One of the main intentions of the control room is to have an independent monitoring source that doesn't affect the gain structure of the mixer. So as I play back audio, you notice that I could adjust the volume, but the gain structure here in my master fader is not affected by it. If I wanted to set a dim value, and that value is set in the preferences, or we could actually have a known reference level. So a lot of film people, for instance, like to mix at 85 dB. So if you've calculated your room and measured it, and you say this is 85 dB at my control room, I can now hold down the Alt key, and as we go, I can go to my known reference level. Now, many times when we're working with different tracks, we can solo particular tracks. So if I want to see what the tracks are doing. But sometimes I may want to hear it more in context with a particular track. So we have something called the listen bus. And we see this little L button here. So solo mutes the other tracks. But when I click on L, the other tracks are just simply dimmed down.